It's okay not to be okay, but I promise I'm trying. By rayrea118. Chapter 4. Dear Harry, I hope your summer studies are going well. If you have any questions on the arithmancy texts, please don't hesitate to ask. I have been spending a good deal of time reading ahead for next term. We only have 2 more years before our OWL exams, so I've begun drawing up revision schedules. I do hope I have enough time to get everything done. My parents are talking about going on holiday for a few weeks this summer, though we will definitely be back in time for August. Ron says the Quidditch World Cup will be in England this year, and he believes his dad can get tickets. It should be so fascinating to watch history in the making. Love, Hermione. Mate, how's everything going? Have you heard from Hermione yet? Can you believe it? 2 years until OWLs and she's already talking about revising. Mental, that one is. Summer's been pretty normal here. Fred and George are holed up in their room most of the time, though the explosions have been at a minimum so far. Percy's got a job lined up at the ministry. The prat. Can't say I thought he'd go anywhere else though. He's been talking about working for the Pillar of Magical Society since before I started Hogwarts. Have you heard? The Quidditch World Cup's going to be in England this year. Dad reckons he can get some tickets through work, so you've got to come. Hermione will be there too. She said the historical aspects would be fascinating. Speaking of siblings, mate, what's up with you and Ginny? Why does she suddenly think you're like best friends or something? She wants to give Errol her letter too, so I better wrap this up. Don't let the muggles get you down, Ron. Dear Harry, don't worry, I'm alright. I won't tell you where I am in case this letter gets intercepted, but I want you to know that I'm safe. If you need anything, I am only an owl away, and I will be there, no matter what. We didn't have a whole lot of time to talk, but I hope to remedy that soon. From what I've seen of you, though, I can tell you are a remarkable young man. You remind me so much of your parents, Harry, and not just in looks. The generous, caring soul is all Lily. The passion and belief in doing what is right is definitely James. And I dare say you've got both of their temper. Never doubt yourself, Harry. You've got good instincts, so use them. And remember, I'm here for you. Padfoot. Dear Harry, I hope everything isn't too horrible. You'd tell me if they were, right? Things have been pretty boring here so far. Mom's got me and Ron doing chores, though I dare say you've probably got more than us. Fred and George are causing their usual mayhem, though fortunately we came to an agreement long ago, so I don't have to worry about them pranking me. Ask me to tell you about it sometimes. It's really quite the story. Ron's been on his guard after the first night when they gave him a duck bill, but right now they're focusing on Percy. They say they need to get it all out now before he moves out. I'm not sure when that'll be, but knowing that he has a job, I'm expecting it any day. Bill left most of his textbooks here when he moved to Egypt, so I've been able to do a little reading for next term. I'm about halfway through the arithmancy tests. It's quite fascinating. I'm very glad I chose it as opposed to divination. Listening to Ron grumble and complain really didn't make the decision too hard. I really hope you're able to get into the class in September so that you can help me with my homework. Please tell me how things are going. I won't accept any lame "I'm fine" letters. I expect you to tell me the truth. You promised, remember? If things get bad, don't forget you are welcome here any time. At the very least, you've got to come to the Quidditch World Cup. I'm sure Ron's already told you about it, so I won't. I miss you, Harry. Please tell me if you're alright. I'm really worried. Have you heard from McGonagall yet? I trust her, so if she says that she's going to get you out, she will. Right soon. Ginny. Summer with the Dursleys was never fun, but Harry knew usually what to expect. This summer, however, he was unpleasantly surprised to discover that Vernon was ready to take his treatment to a whole new level. He was let out of his room before Vernon left for work the next day, and was given a long list of chores to do by Petunia. His cautious inquiry about breakfast was met with a disgusted sniff and a shove towards the cleaning supplies. That day set the routine for the next week. His uncle would wake Harry up before leaving for work. Petunia would give him a list of chores for the day. He would be given 1 meal a day at lunchtime, if you could call it that. Petunia would thrust a piece of bread and a few slices of cheese and a glass of water at him, with a barked order not to get any dirt or mud or dust on the floor, depending on what chore he had been working on that day. He would be back to work shortly thereafter and would spend the rest of the day finishing his chores. If he were lucky, he would go through the list before Vernon returned from work. That usually resulted in a few pointed insults, but sometimes a few slaps or punches, but never to do more than to leave a few bruises. If he didn't finish the list, Vernon would take him to task. Those beatings were worse, much worse. But so far, Harry had been able to escape serious harm. Waking up 1 week after his return from Hogwarts, Harry winced as he tried to get out of bed without jostling the rib he was sure was at least cracked. He was fairly sure it wasn't broken though, which was fortunate, as it would create a whole new set of problems. His vision blurred slightly, reminding him of the blow to the head he had taken the previous night, and Harry grimaced. He heard the now familiar sound of the locks disengaging and knew he had only a few minutes before his aunt would be handing him his list of chores for the day. With a sigh, Harry stood up and got ready to face the day. He whispered a muted prayer for McGonagall to hurry up before he left his room. Minerva McGonagall looked up as the fire in her office flared before the flue spit out Amelia Bones, head of the DMLE. She sat down the piece of paper that she was reading before standing up to give her former student a rare smile. "Thank you for coming, Amelia," she said, gesturing for the formidable woman towards a chair in front of her desk. Amelia nodded as she sat down. "Your note was vague, Minerva. It sounded rather important, so I apologise for the delay. Things have been somewhat busy recently." Minerva's smile tightened. "I understand," she replied. "And you are right, it is rather important, though also quite delicate. I'm hoping that you will be able to help me with some discretion." Amelia contemplated that request, the gears in her mind turning. There weren't many reasons why a professor would be contacting the DMLE. If it was something concerning the school, Albus would be the one to include her. Not that he would. She respected the old man as a powerful wizard, but she took everything about him with a grain of salt. She felt he could be a little heavy-handed and manipulative. Playing things too close to the chest when sharing information would be so much more beneficial. She also did not believe in trusting blindly, as so many seemed to do towards the venerable old man. She believed that trust was earned, and she did not like the way Dumbledore seemed to play with people's lives. After a moment, Amelia nodded her agreement. "I will do my best, but of course you understand that, without knowing what I'm agreeing to, I cannot guarantee anything." Minerva's smile was a little more genuine at that. "I understand," she affirmed, and then paused. How was she to broach the topic, and which to talk about first, Harry or Sirius? Deciding that, of the two, Harry's predicament was more grave, she began there. After all, Sirius had eluded capture for almost a year now. He would be all right for another few days, most likely. Minerva sighed. "It's about a situation where a student's home was brought to my attention shortly before the express departed last week. He told me that his guardians were both physically and emotionally abusive, and I am hoping to get him out of his situation with as little fuss or fanfare." Amelia sat back, considering the concise report she had just been given. As a former Auror and head of the DMLE, she appreciated getting the maximum information in the shortest amount of time. She could draw several conclusions just based on what she had in front of her. That was Minerva coming to her and suggesting the student was in Gryffindor. The fact that she had said guardian suggested the child did not live with his biological parents. Even the lack of Dumbledore gave the illusion that Minerva was reluctant to give any authority figures involved, or rather any that she thought may have their own agenda. Amelia was well known for being a stickler for the law, tough but fair. It was a reputation she prided in and strove to uphold. The only thing she couldn't figure out was whom it was her former professor was trying to help. Clasping her hands together, Amelia sat up straighter. "I will need to speak to the student in question, you understand. But if what you are saying is true, the Department of Child Welfare will need to be involved. If his guardians are, as you say, physically abusive, removing him shouldn't be a problem." Minerva snorted at that, shaking her head. This whole situation was riddled with problems. Amelia frowned. This might be easier if you would just tell me whom you are referring about. Minerva took a deep breath and let out slowly. Harry Potter, she admitted quietly. Amelia froze. No, surely not. She remembered quite clearly the events that had led to the end of the war 12 years ago. Everyone had rejoiced at the disappearance of he who must not be named, but no one had given a second thought to the young boy who had made it happen. Even she was guilty of that. She had been drowning herself in her own grief over the death of her brother and sister-in-law. Adjusting to motherhood, being charged with the care of her now orphaned niece, she fell for her young charge, but never once had she considered the fact that Susan wasn't the only orphan of the war. Somewhere, in an unknown location, a young Harry Potter had lost everything, and everyone he had ever known, and was sent to live with abusive relatives. His aunt hadn't been there to hug away the nightmares that woke him screaming in the middle of the night. Most likely she would have just told him to shut up and let decent people sleep. All of those celebrations about the end of the war, and no one had really given a thought to the young family that had been ripped apart to make it happen. Minerva seemed to understand exactly what Amelia was thinking, because she nodded and handed the younger woman a handkerchief. I know, she commiserated. All that celebrating. James and Lily were two of my best friends, despite the age difference, and I didn't even try to get Albus to change his mind about Harry's placement at his relatives. Not really. I had watched them all day. I knew they were the worst sort of muggles, and yet I still let Albus put him there. I just watched as he left Harry on a doorstep in the middle of the night, with naught but a letter for explanation. And in 10 years, I didn't even ask Albus for an update. I thought he had been watching the boy, but I never confirmed it. I should have done something. The self-disgust was evident in her tone, causing Amelia to set down the borrowed handkerchief and lean forward in her seat. It's not your fault, Minerva, she implored. Albus should have listened to you. I respect him as a wizard, but you can't deny he tends to see people more as chess pieces than human beings. He has his own plans, and it doesn't seem to understand that you need a backup for when those plans go pear-shaped. Minerva chuckled weakly as she nodded her agreement. Albus was a good friend, but there was no denying that he made his share of mistakes, and unfortunately, he wasn't quite as willing to own up to them as some. After a minute of silence, Amelia shook her head. Can you get in touch with Harry? I can file a complaint and bring Patricia Welding on board, and we can go and speak with him. Minerva nodded at the name of the head of the Department of Child Welfare. Patricia had been a Ravenclaw a few years above Amelia. She was capable of using discretion if the situation called for it, and Minerva knew she would respect Harry's wishes. She always looked after the child first, but in her own way, she could be as tough as Amelia. The DMLE had studied the professor for a moment. Where were you thinking Harry would live until he reaches his majority? She asked curiously. Minerva bit her lip, suddenly looking uncertain. I'd rather thought I might take him in, if he was willing, she admitted softly. She wasn't sure how to even ask the young wizard, but the idea appealed to her more and more as she thought about it. McGonagall Castle was rather lonely after all, with just her. Amelia nodded, satisfied. She began to make motions of standing up, but when Minerva stopped her. I actually had another issue I wanted to discuss. Something else Albus should have taken care of. But for some reason he seems unwilling. Amelia frowned, settling back into her seat. She nodded for Minerva to continue, and which she did, hesitantly, doing nothing to settle the former Aura's nerves. Minerva swallowed. She was getting into dangerous territory. A situation came to light at the end of the semester. Are you aware that Sirius Black was never given a trial? Amelia's eyes narrowed. Her heart skipped a beat, and she shook her head. Minerva sighed. A few weeks ago, Harry and his friends were confronted by Sirius, where he explained he had been set up to take the fall for something he didn't do. Black was here? Amelia rose half up out of her seat. but at a glare from McGonagall had her sitting back down, suddenly feeling like the student she hadn't been in many years. Yes, he was here. He snuck into Hogwarts to capture the real culprit, who unfortunately escaped before we were able to question him properly. And just who was this culprit? Amelia asked, somewhat waspishly. Minerva sighed. Peter Pettigrew. She admitted it shamed her that a Gryffindor would betray his friends like that. Amelia shook her head in disbelief. Pettigrew's been dead for 12 years, she denied. Minerva cut her off. All they ever found was a finger. Doesn't that strike you as odd? If he really had been blown up, wouldn't there have been blood or bits of flesh? There never really was a proper investigation. Crouch and Bagnold just declared the matter closed, because everyone knew that Black was guilty. As it turns out, Pettigrew was hiding as a pet rat in the Wizarding House for over a decade. Sirius recognised him from a picture in the Prophet and escaped to protect Harry. Harry and his friends saw Pettigrew with their own eyes, but because of his escape, Fudge wouldn't hear a word about it. Incidentally, isn't it against the law to order someone who never got a trial to be kissed on sight? Amelia considered all the implications from what she had just heard. This was quite the embarrassment for the Ministry, and as a law enforcement official, it rubbed her the wrong way. Then there was the personal implications. She sat back in her seat and rubbed her face tiredly. I don't suppose you have some way of getting in touch with Sirius? She asked curiously. Minerva shook her head. I could try to owl him, but I can't guarantee that would work. I'm sure he's keeping in touch with Harry though, so you could ask him. It would definitely be a point in your favour if you could get him out of his relative's house. He doesn't trust easily, and he seems to be wary of authority figures for obvious reasons. Amelia nodded. I can understand, she admitted. We really failed him, didn't we? Minerva didn't need to reply, even knowing that she was speaking about both Sirius and Harry in that statement. And after a moment, the head of the DMLE stood up, shaking herself off and mentally making a list of things she would need to do to correct this horrible miscarriage of justice. Thank you for including me in this. I will let you know as soon as I speak with Patricia, and hopefully we will be able to talk with young Harry in a day or two. Minerva stood up as well and offered her hand, which was shaken firmly. She let out a small smile. Thank you for your help. The sooner the better, I believe. I never want to see that look of fear in Harry's eyes again. Amelia nodded again. I'll be in touch, she promised, before making her exit through the flue. Minerva waited until the flames had subsided before she sat back down, returning to work. Her chest was feeling slightly lighter with the knowledge that things were moving along, and hopefully soon Harry would be out of that nightmare of a house. Ron, sounds like it's business as usual at the Weasley household. I bet Percy's excited about his new job, though. From what Ginny said, it sounds like the twins are celebrating his appointment in their usual style. That's got to be keeping him on his toes. Speaking of Ginny, she's my friend. I told her I'd write, and I asked her if she would as well. We had a good talk before we left school, and we really have a lot in common. Don't worry, mate. You know you're still my best friend. The World Cup sounds great. Let me know more when you hear. The Muggles are behaving pretty much how I would expect, but I'm used to it by now. I'm fine. Harry. Hermione. I've been doing a lot of studying, both arithmancy and ancient runes. I got a letter from McGonagall a few days ago, and she said I just might be able to take the runes exam too. Just the idea of no more Trelawney is motivator enough to keep me working hard. Summer's been pretty much the same as it always is. So, what about what I expected? I'm fine, and I hope you enjoy your holiday. Harry. Padfoot. I don't know where this will find you, but I do hope you're out of trouble. I wish I could be with you, even if you are just on the run. Anything would be better than the Dursleys. But don't worry about me. Just worry about keeping yourself hidden. I don't want to read about your recapture in the Prophet. I'll be fine, Padfoot. I'm used to this. So please don't worry about me. What you said about my parents really meant a lot to me. I look forward to hearing any stories you can share with me. I miss you. Love, Harry. Dear Ginny, don't worry, I won't even try to sell you that I'm fine crap you asked. I did promise. I won't say things are great or even good. I just hope McGonagall is moving fast. I'm not sure how much longer I can go before I end up cursing Uncle Vernon, underage laws or not. I'm as alright as I can be, Gin. I don't think he's broken anything yet, but I'm really not sure how long that'll last. I don't want to scare you, but I did promise you that I wouldn't lie. I'm doing a lot of studying. Thankfully, I was able to out-order the Arethanti and Ancient Rune books like you suggested, so they didn't get locked up with the rest of my stuff when I got back to Privet Drive. I'm working as hard as I can so I can pass the exams to get into both classes next year. I haven't heard much from McGonagall, but she said she'll be in touch with Amelia Bones from the DMLE. I've never heard of her, though I think she might be related to Susan Bones, a Hufflepuff in my year. McGonagall says that she trusts Ms. Bones, so I guess I should too. I'll keep you updated, Gin. If anything happens, you'll be the first to know. I miss you, and I can't wait to see you again. Hopefully soon. Love, Harry. Harry had just watched Hedwig disappear into the darkening sky with his letters for Ginny and Ron, when a door slamming caused his attention to waver. He swallowed harshly as he heard a muted yelling and the sounds of a heady person making their way up the stairs. It sounded like Uncle Vernon was really angry tonight. And that thought proved to be true as his uncle threw open his bedroom door in the next second. It spoke to his frame of mind that he didn't bother to take the time to disengage the locks, instead of ripping them all off their hinges. His face was a mask of fury, causing Harry to shrink backwards against the window frame, but that didn't do anything to deter the wail coming at him. Time seemed to become meaningless after that, and Harry was only aware of the feeling of pain, and the sound of flesh hitting flesh. He had some vague threats, and something about a lost client of his uncle's being his fault, but he couldn't make much more sense than that. He lost count of the amount of times Vernon's foot connected with his chest. He felt it when the first rib snapped, followed by another crunching sound he was pretty sure was his collarbone. His head connected with the leg of his bed, and darkness encroached on his vision. Finally, Harry welcomed the blackness. He was no longer aware of anything around him. End of chapter 4. Yeesh, that was nasty. Sorry if that was triggering for any of you. I'll put a warning in the description, so hopefully you guys will already know about this before you hear it. I hope that you enjoyed the rest of it though, and please make sure to like, comment and subscribe, and click that little bell and the notification so that you get a little bit of news whenever I upload. I really enjoy doing this. Have a good day, night, or whatever time it is in your time. Bye guys, gals and non-binary pals.